Hello, my name is Agatha and this is your monthly astrological forecast. This is a very generalized reading. If you'd like a private consultation with me, tarot or astrology consultation, please go to my services page, the link is below, and see my rates. Then if you'd like to work with me, just send an email to duniazad@gmail.com. Also, you can support me through my Patreon page, the link is also below. Before going to the reading, I'd like to tell you that I have a newsletter, and if you subscribe, you can win my monthly free tarot reading. The link is www.tinyletter.com/duniazad. All my readings are written by me. There are no software readings, okay? So, Leo, let's see how much will be for you. This is going to be very general. I'm only going to talk about the new moon, the full moon, which in this case is going to be a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse. The solar eclipse happens on March 9th, 2016 at 18 degrees and 56 minutes Pisces, and then the lunar eclipse happens at 3 degrees and 17 minutes of Libra on the 23rd of March 2016. So, for you, Leo, where does the solar eclipse fall? In your case, it falls in the 8th house. The solar eclipse usually speaks of beginnings, of new beginnings in your life, connected in your case with the 8th house matters. So it could be new beginnings in your sex life, new beginnings in joint finances, new beginnings in anything related to the occult, to psychology, new beginnings even to the money that your spouse brings home. Only this solar eclipse is conjunct with the south node, the transiting south node. The south node, whatever it transits in your chart, speaks of something you need to let go. An old idea of thinking, old ways of living, you need to let go of that, and you need to follow the north node in transit, which in your case, it's in your second house. So, your second house asks of you, with the transiting north node, that you open up new ways of making money with your effort. The south node kind of asks you to release yourself of old debts. If you have something that you owe money to, you have, let's say you have lots of credit card debts. Release that. Pay them up. Don't have new credit cards. Don't build up more debt. If you're paying a car, pay the car. If you're paying a house, whatever you're paying for, just try to pay as much as you can. So it's a new beginning that asks of you, Leo, to release something old, old way of dealing with joint finances. So how can one read this? So this could be a deeper psychological understanding of the world and of yourself using spirituality and the occult. So maybe you're reading up, and you have been for a while, about esoterical matters, because they seem to you seem to understand them, or they seem to bring you a deeper psychological knowledge of yourself. It could be that. So it could be reading for the next 6 months. You could be reading more and more of subjects connected. I'm gonna give you some examples: astrology, tarot, Reiki, metaphysics, whatever, anything to do with the occult, or even psychological books, but something that unites mystery in the occult. You could be reading, Agatha Christie novels like Poirot and Miss Marple. Could be that, but I'm thinking more. Could be that, but I'm thinking more something related to spirituality. Or you could be letting go of old debts and finding a new way of dealing with your joint finances, the finances you have, for instance, with your spouse. So maybe your spouse had some sort of debt and you're finishing up paying that debt, and you're dealing with your future together in terms of joint finances in a new way. So let's say that your spouse hid from you that he or she had this big debt looming over him or her. So finally, during the next 6 months, you find a way of paying it, but you have like a heart-to-heart conversation with your spouse, and you have a new plan, which both of you speak of it or put in practice, but you use compassion. That's the best way. Just use compassion. Don't judge. Okay? You can see it in a very analytical way. Okay, so you hid the debt that you had from me, that you had so much debt in your credit card. You should not have this from me. We're gonna start and paying this debt, 1 month from now, 2 months from now. But we have to start looking at our finances that are joined in a different type of matter, in a different way. So you need to come clean to me. You need to tell me always. We need to open a line of communication, because Mercury is also in this 8th house. In Pisces, though it's not conjunct the solar eclipse, it is conjunct Neptune. So you might be speaking to your spouse like that. Okay, so I wasn't happy that you hid this from me, that you had so much debt, but we're gonna pay it, and from now on we're gonna have a plan, and we're going to open up. We are always going to speak of our debt, of the money that we owe. And we're gonna have like a plan in place that speaks of the money that we both can spend, and we're always gonna speak of this. We're not gonna keep this hidden. It's better that if you have this conversation with your spouse, is better, or if it's your spouse who has this conversation with you, because you might be the one who's hiding the debt. Okay, not him or her. That compassion is in place. Okay, use the judgment and the analytical part and the logical and the rational part of this to put the plan in place. Do not judge the other, or don't allow the other to judge you, or tell him or her, please don't judge me like that. It's better to just use compassion. So it can be, this could be also that there's no hiding of that, yet you and both of you paying a debt. So there is a debt, could be something big like your house, and the next 6 months you're gonna end the house payments, or you have a car and you're ending, and you put the plan in place to end and the payment of the car by 6 months from now. It's done. What else? Let's say you have lots of credit cards and you need to limit the money that you both of you spend. So you decide, okay, I'm gonna cut this credit card and this credit card, gonna end it. This could also speak of taxes. Taxes might be raised, so you have, and you know by now that they will be bigger, so like the triple or whatever, and you start preparing for it right now. What else could this be? Sex. The 8th house can also speak of sex. So there's you maybe for medical reasons you cannot enjoy the sex life you have with your spouse. The medical reasons could be yours or could be his or hers. So you have to think of a new way, a new physical way, intimate way to be with your spouse. Let's say there's some sort of impotence, which is the result of an operation or an illness, something that cannot be resolved. So you have to find a new way, a more spiritual way to be intimate with your spouse. One thing that I recommend is checking the Caressa site. It's K-A-R-E-S-Z-Z-A. Caressa. And there's a site which is reuniting.info. Reuniting.info. Check that site out. It's interesting. So a new way of being intimate and making love to your spouse. More in a more spiritual way. So this has different types. Oh, and inheritance. You can, like, out of the blue you can get an inheritance, but you have to be very careful because you could spend it all, and you have to save money to pay the taxes on that inheritance. Don't spend it all, okay? It can happen. It usually means that someone, dies. I hope not, okay? But it could mean that. So it could mean that someone's death might bring you some money. Again, this is just one of the possibilities. And I'm thinking more of finances. All of this, I'm thinking more that this has to do with finances. Again, it depends on your personal chart. So you're spending, there's lots of money coming in because Jupiter is transiting your second house, and Jupiter is bringing you new opportunities to make money. And suddenly there's lots and lots of money. But you should not spend it all. You have to save, okay? You really have to save. Because this solar eclipse makes an opposition, like I said, with Jupiter in the second house, but it makes a square with Saturn in the fifth house, and this Jupiter also makes a square with this Saturn in the fifth house. So, maybe there's like a bigger tax bill that you had no idea you had to pay, or you really need to get rid of that, so you make a payment plan to get rid of this debt, whatever it is, as fast as you can. For that, you need to limit the amount of money, limit Saturn, that you spend, for instance, with your kids. Maybe your kid is in a private school, maybe he or she needs to leave that private school for like a year, for instance, until you end paying this or that. Maybe you just maybe your kids have a credit card. Maybe they don't need the credit card. Maybe you're spending way too much money with your children or your child in whatever. Maybe you give them, him or her, too much gifts. Or maybe he or she has like a very big, cell phone bill every month, and you need to limit that. Or it could be that you're limiting the money that you're spending in your having fun, because the fifth house is also the house of fun. So maybe you can't go out as much as you want. You cannot go to the movies. You cannot go to the theater. You cannot go to this place or to that place and have fun, because you have to limit expenses, because that money is needed to pay off debt, whatever it is. Okay, this is the solar eclipse, and then the lunar eclipse, which speaks of a culmination or an ending, happens in your third house. So it could be that maybe the third house is the house connected with personal environment, the way you go about from place A to place B, cars, either you take a car, your own personal car, or you go by bus. It's connected with siblings and neighbors. So maybe you end up paying a debt connecting to your car. Maybe around the 23rd of March, either you put a plan in place to end this debt as fast as you can possibly pay it, or you actually end, for some you actually, this is the last car payment, for instance, or your car kind of dies because it's really old and you have to, you cannot use this car anymore because it's impossible, and you cannot afford a new car. So another way, or have to give up this car because this car is too expensive, and you have something else which is more important, like your house, and you need to save the money that you had, that you put in your car. You have to save it to pay the house, for instance, or there's a large debt connected with the house. For instance, it could be any other thing, like a tax debt that you have or something else. So you need to give up your car and you need to start taking public transportations. It could be that. Or you just buy a new car. Could be like a more expensive car, or not necessarily, probably a cheaper car, a car that doesn't spend as much, more economic car, a car that doesn't spend, in which you don't have to pay so much tax, for instance. Or this could be nothing to do with you, it could be connected with your sibling. Maybe there are news about a sibling. Maybe this sibling is abroad. Why do I say this? Because the sun is in the 9th house and is in conjunct with Jupiter. Jupiter naturally rules the 3rd house and siblings. So maybe you get a message from a sibling abroad, and he or she tells you about this great accomplishment that he or she had in his or her life. Maybe this sibling ends college, just finishes up college, and he or she is so happy and sends you a message. Or maybe this sibling has a new job, or becomes a mother or a father. Maybe this big thing in his or her life is not in your life, it's in your sibling's life. Another meaning is to do with what else? Neighbors. So maybe you might have like a conflict, an ongoing conflict with your neighbors, because he or she, let's say, didn't pay. You all live in the building together, and there's, in Portuguese you call condóminos. You need to pay a certain amount every month. All the neighbors in one building need to pay that. Maybe that's the source of the conflict. He or she didn't pay, and so maybe around the 23rd, around the lunar eclipse, he or she pays finally, and the conflict ends. Or the conflict was for some other matter, and it ends. Or even in the worst type of thing is like a neighbor in where you live, around where you live, not in your building, dies. I hope not. Okay, so this can have many different types of meanings. And that's it, Leo. That's all that I have for you. I hope you have a great month.